All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to People Are Complicated, where we talk about all the things that make people complicated at work and how you can turn those tensions into deep relationships and work that you are very proud of. I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, Ramona Shaw, the new best-selling author of The Competent and Confident Manager. Ramona, congratulations on being a best-selling author. That's very exciting. And I'd love, as a way of introduction to our audience, can you share what led you to writing this book?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back a few years, maybe a decade, in fact. I was in a first-time leadership role, and I was kind of thrown into the cold water. It was very much, here's the assignment, you go, and you're going to figure this out. And it was interesting, which, I learned not just with the help of Cloverleaf, but also through my own coaching process, that I am a person who kind of thrives with these challenges. I would take that on. I felt pretty confident in the moment and I thought, I was successful so far. I'm going to figure this out myself too. And took on that team. I grew that team, or we doubled it. It was in a very male-dominated profession. In a new country, and it was an expat assignment. I hired people almost double my age, and I was trying really hard to lead that team, but without much help. And after about 2 years of me struggling, not from a performance perspective, but internally just feeling frustrated and sort of like, why is this so complicated? I'm confused. Why am I not getting this? Or why are you not getting this? Why are we all just on the same page? And through that journey of trying to figure that out, I got really interested in leadership development, and I saw how this work helped me tremendously. I would say change the course of my career from then on, being able to lead well and grow my team and take on new projects and new working groups, as well as just feeling good about leading and not being so frustrated. And then through that process, I realized that was really my true passion. And I started building my own practice and coaching and training hundreds of new managers. I started to figure out, there are some really, really common themes, some common challenges, and I wanted to put them in a book to help more people recognize that it's a lot more than just learning new skills. It really requires a shift in thinking and a shift in our mindset and how we see ourselves as leaders in order to not just succeed as an IC, but then also make that transition into leadership in a successful way.
Right. So I hear you telling this story. I hear all the time, which is I was really good at doing my individual contributor job, my technical job. I was a rock star there. And then I got promoted to manage people and was somehow expected to just understand how to do that, like without training. Yeah. We hear that story all the time. I totally experienced that too. My first time I got managed or like promoted to lead people, I just had zero clue what I was doing. I totally relate to that. So that's really fascinating though. What I've never heard is somebody taking that challenge and taking what worked well for them and then turning that into a coaching practice and a book and all the media that you put out. So that's awesome work. I'm glad you have done that, because it is a common problem that people really need help with.
Yeah, totally. I quickly realized I'm not the only one dealing with this.
No.
This leadership development is really not an optional, in my perspective, it's not an optional thing. It is fundamental to setting someone up for success and for ourselves to, like with any other, with any other thing, we realize, we need training. Even if, you learn, I often talk about skiing. You would never go on the top of a mountain and then look down at a very steep hill and think, you know what? Let's just figure this out. Let's try. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. I get that. But it's so interesting because Darren, my co-founder, and I, whenever we talk about why we started Cloverleaf, we actually use that part of my story. Like I was promoted to lead people, and I could see that like if you put these pair of people together, they're a rock star team. But if you put the same person with somebody else, the team can just fall apart. Why is that? How do I lead these people effectively? I have no clue. So we built a technology, and you wrote a book and built a whole practice around it. So that's great. All right, Ramona, one thing, maybe you can pull this from your experience you're talking about right now, the first time you became a leader, or from another part of your career. We love on this podcast to have people share stories of where they encountered that people are complicated. Where was there a time
Yeah.
where you've worked with somebody who was really different from you, and at first there was maybe some friction around that, and then you realized how you could actually use that for, combined superpowers? Can you share a story
Yeah.
like that?
There are many of them. But the story
Yeah.
that I remember most vividly, because I think it was the most painful to
Mm.
experience, and maybe even sort of after the fact, long after that work relationship ended, look back and I think, oh my God, I had no clue, really
Yeah.
had no clue. I think my
Yeah.
heart was in the right place, but my skills and the way that I communicated was really ineffective. So the
Right.
situation is this. I was, like I said in the beginning, I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm a
Hmm.
D on DISC. I'm all about,
Hmm.
getting this task done, focusing
Hmm.
on achieving results. And when it comes down to the details or the methodology that is being used in order to create a certain result, I could kind of like care less. I've learned
Right.
to embrace that and lean into it more. I know that it feels uncomfortable, but sometimes really I have to do this because I've
Yeah.
learned the hard way that if I'm too focused on the results, I'm missing big pieces. But at that time in my career, I did not understand that that would be
Right.
important to someone. I didn't even understand. I think I was so unaware that other people would have different motives, right? A different approach to work. I was in
Right.
a high performing environment where there were probably a lot of high D's, the
Hmm.
people that I worked with. So to me, that was the norm. And
Hmm.
then I had someone on my team who was constantly challenging me on the processes or lack thereof that we had to run our team, to assign tasks,
Right.
to review work. And
Right.
this person found a lot of opportunities that would have made us so much better as a team and allowed us
Right.
to scale and to create a better sense of a better increased certainty, right? And transparency in how certain things are allocated, which then also would have probably made people feel like I'm being more transparent and I'm being more fair.
Right.
But because I was going with the whatever is the fastest, doesn't really matter what I'm thinking. It's just, let's get this done fast. There is no
Mm.
benefit in being fair or being transparent. I
Mm.
blocked that out. And so this person, I remember vividly, came into a meeting with me. It was a one-on-one conversation and said, Ramona, I have this amazing idea because right now, here is how we're running the process. And about 20 seconds into that conversation, I thought, that's not helping us get there faster. It's also
Ah.
not helping us get there better. I mean, get a better result. It just is more organized. And why would I want to do that? And I
Ah.
shut that idea down. It's like, okay, thanks so much. And no, thank you. Right. And
Oh
I,
man.
I could see in this person's face the disappointment, the really that sadness, or maybe then the disengagement from it, thinking, you know what, it's always her way and I'm not adding value. And the things that are important to me aren't even considered. I'm not even being heard. How am I
Ah.
supposed to contribute to this team? And I did not see that at all until way later, right? Going through some realizing, oh my gosh, that's what this was about. And I think so for me, that recognition of leading and really pulling out these strengths and appreciating that, we would have developed so much more engagement and also better processes.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so I want to dig into some things here. So let's think of that time when that person walked into the room and had that amazing idea that you thought, no, that's not going to help us go faster.
Yeah.
What were you feeling? What were you thinking at the time? Were you thinking like, oh, I'm going to help this person learn? Were you thinking, oh my gosh, again, this person's slowing us down? Like, what was your thought process and your emotions behind that conversation?
Yeah, definitely the latter. Of like,
Mhm.
don't have time for this. No,
Yeah.
no, not again.
Hmm.
Right? Just get the work done. Who cares? I mean, it sounds so bad, but that was my internal dialogue, which in retrospect, right, I realize, ouch. But even now in coaching conversations, maybe not to that extent, but I see patterns of this, my way is kind of the better way,
Right.
weaved into stories or experiences that people have in the
Right.
workplace.
Well, and I think that that's actually a really great thing for you to be transparent about is that at the time you thought, no, I am correct here.
Yeah.
And there was a lack of curiosity on your part, which I think is actually encouraged. If you are really good at your job and then you're promoted to be the manager, you're not really like taught to say, hey, I know you did a really good job at this, but maybe there's other ways other people are going to do a really good job that are complementary to you. So pause on your style and consider that like maybe the way you've always done things isn't the right way, even though it's what got you promoted, right? I appreciate you being honest about the fact that in the moment you were not even thinking, oh, what a good development opportunity for this person. You were just thinking, oh my gosh, not again. This person keeps making mistakes. It's time for them to learn the right way. We got to go faster.
Totally. And you're bringing up such a good point, because we get reinforced through the promotion. A lot of people, right, transitioning into leadership, they get reinforced. You're doing it right.
Yep.
You are delivering the results. You are reliable, dependable, a high achiever, right?
Yep.
We want more of that. So we want you to lead the team. And in that message is, okay, great. So what I'm doing is working, and I just now need to have a group of people doing it the way I'm doing it.
Right.
Yeah, I was definitely falling into that trap, and I see this now. One of the common challenges that new managers face is that idea, or misconceptions even, that on one hand I need to have all the answers, right? I need to know, and so therefore I have to sort of dictate or guide very much for other people to do the way that I'm doing it, as well as I have to lead the way I like to be led. And based on how I'm doing work. That's what we're here to do, which is completely wrong. Yeah.
Everything you said is very like me-centric, which in one sense could sound selfish, but in another sense it could sound like a whole lot of pressure on the new leader. I also, one of the other things I think about is, what were you held accountable to at this time? What were your metrics that you had to stick to?
Yeah, it was results. It was quality,
speed and efficiency.
Speed and efficiency, right? Output.
Yeah. So it makes sense that you weren't encouraged. Like you had no incentive and no training to slow down and consider, oh wait, we might actually move faster if we have different perspectives at the table here.
Yeah, eventually. I think part of it was the circumstance of not having the support in the moment, or the coaching, or in fact the training or tools like Cloverleaf that would have helped me build this awareness. And then in the other part, I think it was me too, meaning that I was naturally inclined to be results driven, and that's my natural style, and not so people focused. Or really. Less about how can I help you, and more how can we get there fast.
Right.
And then also I came in with a good amount of confidence. And now, as I'm helping new managers, I see there's this spectrum on the confidence. And I talk about this in the book too, of being really doubtful and concerned about this new role, and worrying that maybe this is too big for me, and who am I to lead, and I don't know what I'm doing. And people on that side of the spectrum, they're usually more keen to jump into coaching programs or ask for leadership development training. And they are reading books even ahead of their day one, right? And then on the other side, there are people who are very confident, and they think, well, I'm definitely the strongest here. That's why I got promoted. And I've had a lot of success in the past. And this is just another challenge. I love it. I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to win it. And that confidence may help them lead the team and sort of show up and speak up and be confident. But then it may shut them down, right? In terms of learning and being open-minded that, oh, this is a different ballgame. We're not just doing more, we're doing different.
So interesting. Another thing I think is really interesting about your story, Ramona, is that you are, like you just said, you weren't people focused. It's not your natural to be people focused, but now that's all you do. Is you coach people to be people focused. So how did that transform? What was that transition?
Yeah. Well, I think this not that like the thing that is innate is still, I want a result. The way I develop my programs are very much measurable. I need to see that what we're doing is creating an outcome for the other person. But I also, looking back, even I was debating if I should study HR, focus on in my master's degree on HR or in finance. And I remember I was actually I signed up for HR, and about 2 weeks into my master's program, I had this moment of panic. I'm like, what am I doing? No. I don't want this. I'm going to jump and switch and actually start focusing on finance. And I do, looking back, I do recall, or I see the thread that I was always interested in people's stories, in what's going on in their brain. I just didn't have the maturity. It was all still about me versus now I'm really interested in learning how brains work and how other people work and helping them achieve results. I get a tremendous amount of satisfaction out of it. And I think that's just the way I channel it today.
Yeah. It is still results focused, but it's results focused in support of other people, like supporting other people to achieve those results. And that's more satisfying than just white knuckling it through.
Yeah, totally. And I love this work. I think it's, I'm so beyond grateful to be able to help others through this journey.
Yeah. All right. So Ramona, let's dig in a little bit into some practical advice and help for new managers or seasoned managers. We all are always growing, right? We've kind of been touching on this, but I know a theme that you really focus on in your coaching is self-awareness and understanding yourself as a human and as a leader, and how that builds you towards understanding those that you're leading. So let's dig in a little bit more there.
Yeah. So when I look at leadership development, I think there are 3 pillars, and I call this the APS, or my APS method is often what I refer to it. And the first pillar is awareness. And I think anywhere on that journey, whether you're just new in your first leadership role, or you're scaling up and you're anywhere along on that leadership journey, that's right, more like a dimmer than a light switch. We're always learning and growing.
Yes, I like that analogy. Yes.
Right. And I think there are 3 pillars that we have to constantly iterate on and try to optimize and adapt to the circumstances that we're dealing with. The first one is awareness, not just awareness about ourselves, but equally about awareness about the people that we work with.
Right.
The stakeholders, the team members, our own boss, and trying to figure out what motivates them. How does their brain work? How do they make decisions? What excites them and inspires them? What is draining their energy? And I use Cloverleaf, as you know, as part in my practice on a daily basis with my clients. And it's such a great tool to build that awareness. And then
I also use Cloverleaf every day in my practice. I need it just as bad.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. But I think that that's a really good point, is that like nobody has ever fully arrived at suddenly being the guru on understanding people. Like what you're talking about is a lifelong learning process, and there's always new surprises. There's always new ways, because we are so used to how we operate, results driven, get stuff done, right, for you. And like, even in all the wisdom and knowledge that you and I have on this, we both, I'm sure, I know I do, so I won't speak for you, but I can default back to thinking, well, everyone else clearly sees this. Oh, no, they don't. And they're not motivated by that. And they are different. Oh, that's right. I knew this. I forgot. So I think that's a really good thing to call out, is that it's a lifelong journey.
It's a lifelong journey. And I think, spending a lot of time in that space around developing awareness, self-awareness, as well as awareness of other people and those we work with, creates a overall sort of I feel like this voice in my head that changed from judgment of why would you say that? Why would you do that? Why would you bring up this methodology that doesn't help us go faster or do it better? That judgment transformed into curiosity. And so every time someone says something that I think, where's this coming from? I immediately think about it. Oh, something I'm not aware of. Like, help me understand what your thought process is, or help me understand what motivates you to do this or to pursue it. And
so do you actually ask that question, or do you coach your managers to ask that question?
Yeah, not a why. Like, why would you say that? Yes. Right. So it may sound like, I'm coming from a very curious place, but then it sounds judgmental. But really, in that moment when we are confronted with a situation that is challenging interpersonally, to bring it up, because oftentimes we either get frustrated, we withdraw from the conversation, or we just come off too harsh and too
Yeah.
judgmental in a moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do coach people on having that conversation and say like, hey, tell me about it. What was going on for you,
Yeah.
or what are you thinking with this?
Yeah.
I want to understand, because I trust that, one, you want to do the best, two, you
Yes.
have positive good intentions, and
Yes.
therefore it's just about me not seeing something that you're seeing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I love the help me understand. When I first heard that phrasing, I thought, well, that sounds very clinical. But actually, the more that I use it, the more it's just very natural. Hey, help me
Yeah.
understand why you did it that way. Help me understand why you're bringing up this problem for the third
Mm-hmm.
time now. I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I thought that, this was simpler than that. Or, just like
Yeah.
bring me into your perspective here. I really like
Yeah.
that. And I think that's helpful. That's a helpful tactic to share with people is like, hey, I believe you're doing your best. I believe you're seeing something. I'm not quite there yet. Can you get me there? Can you help me?
Yeah. Yeah. Or even, right, just my brain functions differently. When
Right.
I do, for example, trainings on the 16 types assessment, or we're looking at the dashboard, and
Right.
sometimes I bring up a painting, which is really interesting. Somewhat like a painting with a lot of stuff on it. And then I
Right.
ask people to reflect back what they see. And you can immediately
Yes.
tell that certain people with a certain outcome on the 16 types assessment will start talking about, there's a waterfall, or there's like, there's clouds moving through the sky. And then other people will say, there is like a little cross on the right bottom of it,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a flower, or looks like maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe a sun on the
Mm-hmm.
top left, and they see all
Mm-hmm.
this detail. And I think it's so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to realize, yeah, just because my brain works in one way, that's not how the world is. That's just my brain. And
Yeah.
when people see things that I don't see, it's about developing that on the awareness and being
Absolutely.
curious to engage. Yeah.
That reminds me, Ramona. I was just listening to an IDEO podcast. I'm such a fan of IDEO. And they were talking about, I forget, it's like visual based leadership or something. I forget what it's called. But they were talking about how just having like a 20 to 30-minute conversation about a painting is one of the
Hmm.
best ways to do team bonding and like get ready for a really challenging problem that you need to solve. Is just spend literally 20 to 30 minutes just what do you see in this painting? And everyone just
Yeah.
talking about it because we see such different things. And the more time you spend on it, the more you realize, oh my gosh, Scott thinks in this way.
Yeah.
And Peggy
Totally.
thinks in that way. Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. It's like, I can't imagine seeing what you're seeing.
I
It's like those
know.
moments like, what are you seeing? It's like, did not occur to me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
self-awareness really helps you, one, just start to understand your own biases and what your defaults are, which are good. There are real
Hmm.
strengths in that, but it also can open your mind to there are differences. There are different ways to
Hmm.
see this. I could notice the little cross, or I could notice the waterfall, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that can help you understand where to lean on your people, and also just to be curious. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Like be curious and
Curious.
ask open-minded questions.
Totally. And I think that brings me to another point in terms of what are some of the common challenges that new managers
Yeah.
face. And I think
Yeah.
one of them is that they often see a problem in a behavior, someone acts in a way that we don't like, or someone says something that we don't
Yep.
like. And
Yep.
then the manager's approach is to fix the behavior that we've experienced. And
Yep.
go in and say like, hey, when you do this, and even if they have a feedback framework, right, to say like, when you do this is the situation, then here's the impact, and I would appreciate if you did it differently next time.
Right.
And let's use a very simple example: someone coming late or joining meetings late on a regular basis, and the manager may feel like, you know what, I should probably bring this up. I would say, you're coming late, it holds up the team, please be on time.
Right.
Then it may, and then a lot of people will recognize this situation. It will improve for about 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, you know what happens? They're back
They're
to coming
late.
late. Right, they're late. And I think when we're looking at the behavior, we're looking at the top of the iceberg. And we're not
Mhm.
looking at what is on the bottom of the iceberg, what's actually creating this situation in the first place. I see this often when someone says, well, my employee's procrastinating on this thing. They're just not doing it. And I don't
Right.
know why. I keep asking and we keep moving the deadline and they're not delivering. And so I keep, sending them reminders. I do everything I can to help them with this. And I say it. And I say, yes,
Yep.
but you're talking about the top of the iceberg. And that's important, but it's not enough because you
Mm,
have to get to the bottom of the iceberg. And more experienced leaders will start to see these patterns. And what I
mhm.
encourage new managers to do is to start off with that mindset of something's not working on the top. Yeah, I can bring that up. But then if that doesn't help, we got to go deeper and we got to look at, are they
Yeah.
not confident that they can do this successfully? Is there
Mhm.
something that they're struggling with where they can't tell someone, they don't feel confident enough to tell someone, hey, I have a hard stop, I got to go? Or
Right.
where they feel they need to be on Slack and responding all the time because there's a sense of insecurity or lack of clarity in terms of expectations
Hmm.
on their availability. What is actually going on underneath it all that creates them or leads them to act a certain way?
How might somebody dig deeper into that iceberg? Like, what questions can they ask? What things should they look for? How do they actually navigate that conversation?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to bring it back quickly to Cloverleaf because Cloverleaf could actually be a good tool. I would probably say, like, if your team is on Cloverleaf, look
Yeah.
at it, right? Look at it first
Hmm.
and think, like, can I see something here that would give me a bit of an indicator?
Hmm.
To then dig deeper and say, like, hey, I noticed this. Is this connected to this particular issue that we're having?
Hmm.
Um, Tell me, like, is there something that you see here that would help us understand what's going on?
Yeah.
But at the bottom of it, the core of it is to say, hey, I noticed we've talked about this before. It improves for a little bit, but then it seems like we're back into that same pattern.
Yep.
What do you think the reason is for the pattern? Not looking for solutions. Too we're often too quick to problem solve.
Right.
But if it comes to behavioral change, we can't just problem solve. We
Right.
have to understand the root cause of it first.
Wow. That's so good. What do you like? Just asking, hey, what do you think is behind this pattern? Like, hey, we've talked about this pattern before. It's now
Yeah.
clearly a pattern. What do you think is
Yeah.
happening there? Why do you think
Yeah. What is
this?
happening? And
Hmm.
even sometimes connecting it back to their personal lives, not being intrusive with questions about their personal lives, but an
Yep.
open question such as, so here's the pattern that I'm seeing. Is this a pattern that you see in other areas of your life as well? Like,
Good
and
one.
that may open them up, like, yeah, that
Hmm.
happens. I see the same thing with family
Yeah.
members or with friends, or yes, in fact, I've done that in past work engagements as well. And then dig deeper. Yeah.
I mean, it opens the door to vulnerability. It's a
Hmm.
vulnerable conversation. It
Yeah,
could
but
be not. It,
it could be
it,
not, but if we're looking to create behavioral change, we
mm-hmm.
have to show that impact is not. If someone isn't seeing that what they're doing is creating a problem,
Hmm.
then they're not going to change
Right.
because change is hard,
Yeah.
and that's why they can do it for 2 weeks, but then it kind of gets hard, uncomfortable, and then they'll switch
Hmm.
right back. So if we
Hmm.
want that, we have to, in one hand, we have to reduce the pain of change. We have to tell them, I will support you. How can we make this work for you? What are
Hmm.
some, immediate steps, like small? How can we start with small steps that will get us there? That's
Right.
one, but we also have to make sure that they understand the implications of this particular pattern. Like if someone
Right.
frequently says something and then they don't follow through,
Yep.
that creates a lot of impact in terms of trust, dependability. People might not want to work with you because they can't rely on you actually delivering, even though you might be the smartest person and the most, the one with the best expertise, their highest expertise
Right.
on the team.
Hmm.
If they can't trust you, they may choose someone else to be on that
Right.
project. And so showing the implications that it has will help them feel more motivated to change. And if it expands into personal relationships, that's just connecting the dots that we're not a different person when we walk into an office
Which
or work from
is
home.
totally, yeah, that's totally true. Nobody is a different person in or outside of work. I actually really appreciate when my people feel comfortable enough to say, like, yeah, I totally do that with my boyfriend or with my wife, or,
Hmm.
like she would tell you all about it. And then we can have, just, we're just human here, like
Hmm.
I understand we're all human here. And I think that it is a real interesting thing that people think they could or should be different in different aspects of their life. You're still the same human. And it's actually the more integrated we can be, the healthier we are, and the more we can just understand and relate to each other as humans too, which is really good. So
100%.
Ramona, what I hear you talking about is one of the things I really love about what you're talking about, by the way, is, if you talk about somebody procrastinating or somebody saying they're going to do something and they don't do it, that so commonly happens and then just leads to a non-conversation, but where everyone starts to understand, you know what? I am not going to give Jackie an assignment that I depend on this much ever again, or like, oh, we just know that Sam won't deliver or whatever,
Yeah.
And I love that you're coming at it from a perspective of, hey, let's not make it a judgment. Let's actually have a curious conversation about what's happening there. And part of that is saying some, critical truth of, hey there, Sam, you said you were going to do this and you didn't. This is the impact of that. Can you help me understand why this happened? Let's dig into what is beneath that iceberg, which the top of the iceberg is just, you didn't do it. You're a ball dropper, right? That is challenging, Ramona. That's really challenging. The easier thing to do is to judge the person and not rely on them anymore, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because it requires some uncomfortable conversations potentially.
It does.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and it's a middle ground conversation because it's also not the conversation of, hey, you really dropped the ball. That's a huge problem. Don't do it again, which is a little bit more comfortable than, hey, you dropped the ball. Here's the problems that creates. Let's dig into why it happened. Let's go there together. All right,
Yeah,
Ramona.
it takes courage.
Oh, it takes courage. It does. Why is it that talking to people can be so scary and hard sometimes, right? Yes.
Yeah, I recently read that from research that the social threats, right, the threat of being excluded socially, actually to our brain seems like physical pain. And it makes sense, right? It's like that survival instinct. We are social creatures, and so anything that we do that seems that potentially could threaten social relationships or relationships, even in the workplace, they seem painful. Truly do.
Yeah, it really does. I understand that so personally. Ramona, one last thing I want to touch on with you because I know I've heard you talk about it before. Everything we've talked about today obviously can equip people to be more effective at work and more effective for the people that they lead, but it also impacts far beyond work. It impacts their whole life. So can you talk a little bit more about what you've seen and in your work, what you've seen for the people that you're able to coach, how that impacts beyond just the workplace?
Yeah, and you said that earlier of you appreciate when people say like, oh my gosh, I see this my boyfriend or my partner all the time, this is what they bring up. I hear this so often when we do debriefs of assessments, for example, or we talk about listening and not immediately problem solving, so that the coaching skills. People are like, oh my gosh, I do this not just at work, I do this at home, I always try to problem solve, that's just who I am. Like, well, maybe not. Maybe it's who you were. And then they start to look at, because like I said, we're not a different person at work than we are at home. And that also means, which is actually a really cool thing, the moment we start to learn new skills, we can practice them not just in workplace situations, we can go out and practice them in personal situations as well, which will make us better humans in all areas of our lives. And because we get to practice more and we don't restrict it just to workplace situations, we'll get better at it faster.
Yep.
And that could be through, I realized that, or my spouse said that I'm a better listener, that I actually ask questions before I try to problem solve. So that's a frequent one, something that I hear fairly common or fairly
great.
often. Right.
I mean,
that we all want that.
we're kind of laughing about it, but that is trajectory changing, right? To go from a place of this was a thing that in my personal life continuously caused more and more tension. And now my spouse has actually noticed a
Mm-hmm.
difference in me, that I'm no longer doing that thing
Yeah.
that's really annoying and is creating a pattern of like, oh, I just won't even open that conversation, to, oh, we
Mm-hmm.
can better understand each other, and we
Mm-hmm.
can, like, that impacts a person's whole life and well-being. Because another thing is, if you had that
Yeah.
conversation at 7 a.m. with your partner and it didn't go well, and it was that thing where you're just constantly trying to problem solve and it angers them, and then you're exhausted, that's who you are at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
for your first call, So that does impact
100%. Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
And another one that I hear often so in my coaching programs, I talk often about sort of this differentiating the facts from our interpretation. So looking at
Yeah.
what's a fact, what's a thought. And oftentimes people come back, a week later, we'll talk again and we reflect on what happened or how they practiced it. And they'll say, oh my gosh, my friend called and was venting about this particular situation or some, challenge that they were going through. And I immediately listened and I looked for fact thought. And then I was able
Wow.
to look back and say, like, okay, so factually what happened is this and this. And you made that mean this and this. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, okay. And then they're able, it's not necessarily that they trying to coach the other person without their permission. That's not what we're going for. But we're looking at, they become better friends because they can be so much more helpful by not just feeding into it and say, like, yeah, that is completely, beyond acceptable, and that is a disaster, and you could never ever do this. And instead they start to differentiate, oh, what is actually factually happening versus what is the story in our
Yes.
head. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. That's just so good, Ramona, because that does make you a much better friend. Sometimes you don't need the friends who are just going to, like, add fuel to your fire, but who are going to help you
Totally.
expand your own perspective. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's really beautiful.
And maybe calm you down, like, wait a second, that's not what this person said. This person said
Right.
XYZ. Right?
Right.
Could it mean something else? And then like, yeah, you're right, maybe I'm making too much of a deal out of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because sometimes you think as a friend, like, maybe I shouldn't say anything about the fact that I see, whatever, this pattern repeating in you. But actually, no, you really should. That's what the best friends
Yeah.
will do, is help you
Totally.
grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
another thing that we haven't exactly called out, but that I've really witnessed and personally experienced, is that when you can have those conversations, whether it's with your family members, with your partners, with your coworkers, with the people you manage, with your friends, it at first feels really uncomfortable, going into it, this might, I'm not exactly sure how to navigate this, but it always ends up in deeper understanding of each other
Mm-hmm.
and a more committed relationship. Maybe not
Mm-hmm.
immediately. Sometimes it's a little rocky,
Mm-hmm.
but it really does lead to a richer relationship, which is so much better, obviously, in your personal life, but that actually has huge implications at work. I mean, back
Mm-hmm.
to Ramona, your tie to efficiency, right? Like, it actually
Mm-hmm.
makes teams more efficient. It's not
Mm-hmm.
the only reason to do it, but you will definitely benefit from the results that come from those deeper relationships, where people know that they're cared about, and where they're able to further discover who they are. Why do they do those things they do? And how can they leverage the good parts of those and grow beyond the blind spots of those things that they do? So
Yeah.
that's something I love to see. And I've heard you say it throughout this conversation.
Yeah, and like we've just talked about, these things expand into all areas of our lives. I have 3 little kids. I notice it on a daily basis with my kids as well,
Yeah.
where these little things come up, where I
Yep.
think, they're all so different. So it really helps you see they don't have my brain, that's for sure. But then they also have, all of them have very much their own thing that gets them excited, and where they feel recognized and how they feel valued. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. My husband and I joke about it because we saw it at the hospital room. Like within 24 hours of our 2 children being born, they were totally different, and we could see it right away. And it remains true. So yeah, I think that's a great thing to call out. Is it a lot of these things are innately just intrinsic to us, like whether we are, what makes us feel appreciated, as you've brought up, but also like, how do we solve problems? How do we see the world? To your point of how do we see the painting? A lot of that we are actually born with. Nurture definitely plays a role in it, but nature is very strong.
Nature's very strong. Yeah.
And
And I
like,
think as parents, we really see this day in and day out, don't we?
you totally do. And I think it's such an
Yeah.
honor that managers and leaders have, is that we actually have the position to help people see those things that are innate in them and what is good about them, and where those can be applied for strengths, for better results. Like, I think of like, my husband is super process oriented. I am not at all. And that is like something that the more I can understand that, the more I understand where that makes our family better and where we can divide and conquer. I think of people that I manage who like are very similar to me or very different from me, and how I have been able to like dig through some of the tension that can come up from the fact that we're really similar or from the fact that we're really different, and find better ways to lean on them, to where I'm relieved and they're relieved, and they're doing the stuff that they're proud of, and they're growing beyond, where they were even just like 2 months ago. And that's a huge, not only is it a relief to everyone's life, it's also just a huge honor to get to play that role in somebody's life. It's also a responsibility we have, right? Like it's not easy, but when you wade into those conversations, when you dig deeper into the iceberg.
Yeah. Which it's interesting. I read, it's been a couple of years, maybe a year ago or so. There is a professional network, or a community, let me put it that way, a professional community online. And someone asked a question like, hey, I'm a new manager. Who's the best person that ever managed you, and why were they the best manager you've ever had?
Great question.
And I thought it was such a great question, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I was like all into the comments. I wanted to know what people said. And there were, I have dozens and dozens of comments to this. And the common thread in all of those was that the manager saw something in them that they didn't see. The manager believed in them more than they believed in themselves. The manager instilled confidence in them and challenged them to do more and to do better. And it wasn't, it wasn't about other stuff. It was really about how they made us feel about ourselves. And that stood out. It was black and white. It was so obvious that was the theme, that all the people who responded said, no, such a clear answer. The best manager I ever had was this person, and this is why.
I want to be that leader.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think I think for some people this may be the natural thing to do. For most people, this requires intentionality. It requires really to make that our goal, to be that kind of manager, and then also doing the work, right? And to get to that place where we can highlight their strength, call it out, instill that confidence, have these kind of conversations,
right?
Dig into what makes them work.
And even if it is natural to you, you still have to always work at it, right? Like it is, you're still going to be tired some days. And to our point earlier, like when you first became a manager, you were held to results. Like that does not directly tie to building up your people who are different from you and that you don't understand yet, right? Like it's not clear how like if you slow down to take the time to be that manager who like really understands your people and sees their potential more than they do and believes in them more than they believe in themselves, how that actually might create a bit of a wandering path at first, but gets you to the place where you get your results. But when that's not clear to us, when we've not seen that before, it's just not intuitive, and it's really hard work. So
absolutely,
I believe everyone should go buy your book then.
I believe so too.
To figure out how to navigate that. I really appreciate some of the tactics and like frameworks that you talked about, like today talking about the iceberg. when you see a pattern repeating, definitely call it out, have the conversation, but dig deeper. It's not about the behavior. It's about what's happening underneath the surface. Because out of your beliefs or out of your, just the way you're wired, that's where your behavior ends up coming from. I also really appreciate you saying, Ramona, be curious. And specifically, don't use the word why. Why did you do that? Because that is inflammatory. But be curious and actually ask those questions of, hey, help me understand. Hey, what specifically was going on in this situation? Can you show me? Can you take me deeper to see what was going on? And then also your most recent one, you said, what's the fact versus what's the thought? And separating those two. I think those are all really helpful tactics that anybody can take away, but especially if you are in leadership. I also always want to call out, even if you're not specifically in a title of leadership, you are always leading. Everyone.
100%.
Everyone. Even if this is your first job in high school, you're leading the culture around you. You're influencing in everything that you do. So everyone can be that great leader who sees the potential in everyone around them, even if it's not in your title yet.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Ramona, so much wisdom. If people want to keep hearing from you or connect with you, how can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I post there quite frequently. Also, ramonashaw.com is my website, and the book is called The Confident and Competent New Manager, available on Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ramona.
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much,
your time
Kirsten.
with us today. And I want to give a specific shout out to our producers, Nicole Chance and Michael Meyer. Thank you so much for making this look good. This was our first ever virtually recorded podcast. Ramona, thanks for working through the kinks with us. And everyone,
Thank
be
you.
sure.
Flawless execution. Thank you.
That is Nicole and Michael right there. They get all the credit for that. And everyone, make sure you tune in to the next episode of People Are Complicated. Thanks so much.